I woke before she did. The ceiling above us was still unfamiliar, rented for the honeymoon, whitewashed, quiet. Her breathing was steady, one arm draped carelessly over the sheet. It should have been the happiest morning of my life. Instead, I stared at the light crawling in through the blinds, a knot building behind my ribs. She hadn't cried at the ceremony, but I had. Just once. When she slipped the ring on my finger, eyes locked on mine like I was the center of her world. Maybe I wanted to believe in that moment more than I should have. Maybe I needed it too badly. I turned my head toward her. She was already pulling away, just subtly, the space between us a few inches wider than when we'd fallen asleep. She didn't smile when she opened her eyes. No good morning, no sleepy touch. Just a blank look, a pause too long before she mumbled, "I think I'm still tired." I kissed her forehead. "Long night," I said, trying to mask the tightening in my gut with a soft grin. She nodded without meeting my eyes. Breakfast was room service. She picked at her food, barely touched the orange juice. I cracked a few jokes. She smiled once, quick, brittle. I could tell she was trying, but the rhythm between us was off, like we were dancing to music only one of us could hear. I told myself she was overwhelmed. That maybe the rush of the wedding, the travel, the expectations, it all caught up with her. That it would pass. But something kept pressing against the back of my mind. Her silence wasn't blank. It wasn't exhaustion. It was preoccupied, like she was elsewhere, holding something in. I watched her scroll through her phone that afternoon on the couch, half under a throw blanket, legs tucked beneath her. I asked who she was texting. She said, "Just Mia. She's checking in." Her voice was even, maybe too even. I nodded, said nothing, and turned back to my book. Later, when she was in the shower, I remembered that pause, the delay before she answered me. Not guilty, just calculated. And then, that night, lying beside her again, I noticed the way she positioned herself, her back toward me, shoulders rigid. Not tired, not annoyed, just removed. I reached over, brushed my fingers along her arm. "You okay?" She hesitated, then said, "Yeah, just adjusting. Everything feels big." I pulled her close, more out of instinct than belief. She let me, but her body didn't soften. I didn't know it yet, but the vows we said under the soft lights of the garden hadn't even made it 24 hours before something broke them. And I would come to learn she hadn't adjusted, not to marriage, not to me. She'd made her choice the moment the ceremony ended. I just hadn't seen it. Not yet. We flew out to Santorini 3 days after the ceremony, a blur of champagne toasts and hotel check-ins. Her mood bounced like it had snapped back into place, laughing at my dumb airport jokes, clinking glasses at dinner, letting me carry her sandals as we walked the edge of the caldera. It felt like a correction. Like maybe the offbeat distance from that first morning was just nerves, a temporary slip. But even when she smiled, it didn't always reach her eyes. It happened on the 4th night. We were in the villa, sorting through photos from the sunset cruise on her phone. I was standing behind her, my hands resting lightly on her shoulders as she scrolled through the shots. Wind in her hair, white cliffs behind us, everything beautiful enough to convince a man his life was exactly what he'd always wanted. Then the notification slid across the top of the screen. A preview of a message, just a name I didn't recognize, no last name, no emoji, no icon photo. The kind of name that feels intentionally unspecific. The message read, "Wish I could have seen you again before you left." She tilted the phone ever so slightly, just enough to obscure the screen. Her thumb swiped the notification away, too fast, too casual. I didn't say anything. I just felt my pulse change. She didn't comment on it, just kept scrolling through the photos like nothing had happened. Showed me one of us laughing, then another of her holding a glass of wine. I leaned down and kissed the side of her head. She didn't stiffen, but she didn't lean into it either. That night, as she stepped out of the shower wrapped in a towel, I casually asked, "Who's James?" The name I remembered from the message. She didn't blink. "James? From college, I think. He commented on an old photo." "Why?" I shrugged. "Just curious. It popped up earlier. Thought I should know the guy I'm competing with." She laughed, a tight, slightly offbeat sound. "No competition. Just friends." And maybe that would have settled it if the tone hadn't been rehearsed. If she hadn't immediately changed the subject, asking about dinner, then about a couple we'd met on the catamaran. Redirecting. I didn't push. I kissed her again. Told her she looked beautiful, even though something in my gut had shifted from unease to attention. That was the first time I chose to let a crack pass unexamined, the first clue I filed away instead of interrogating. But later, alone on the balcony while she dozed inside, I found myself staring out at the dark water and thinking about the message. Wish I could have seen you again before you left. It didn't read like something sent to a woman newly married. It read like something you text someone whose time with you was unfinished. And that, more than the message itself, lodged beneath my skin. It was the way she didn't flinch. The way she covered the screen without hesitation. The way she answered too quickly, too smoothly. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't the only one trying to capture a memory on that trip. Someone else had wanted one last glimpse of her, and I had just missed it. The house felt wrong the moment we walked back into it. It should have been a beginning, first steps into married life, into a home we'd picked together, painted together. But the moment we crossed the threshold, I noticed the way her shoulders tightened, how she drifted toward the kitchen without a word while I wrestled the luggage through the door. She didn't ask me to unpack with her. She didn't come up behind me while I hung our coats, or drop a kiss on my neck like she used to do when she thought I wasn't paying attention. She just vanished upstairs for a shower. I told myself she was decompressing. But the feeling I had, standing alone in our quiet living room while the water ran above, wasn't peace. It was vacancy. Over the next few days, the pattern hardened. She began waking up late, not just sleeping in, but lingering in bed like she didn't want the day to start. I'd head to the office early. She'd still be in pajamas by the time I returned. When I asked how her day had been, she always smiled a little too fast and said, "Productive," but never offered more. And when I touched her, even casually, brushing her lower back as I passed behind her at the sink, she didn't flinch, but she didn't lean in either. Just kept moving, like her body had learned to evade without rejecting. One night I cooked, her favorite, even remembered the garnish she liked. She said thank you, kissed my cheek, and left half of it untouched. I sat across from her at the table, watching her scroll her phone with one hand and swirl her fork with the other. She wasn't rude. She wasn't cold. She was absent. Like she was practicing how to disappear without being noticed. And I couldn't tell anyone. Who wants to hear a man say his wife pulled away 5 days after saying, "I do"? Who'd believe it? People love the story of newlywed glow. No one wants to hear about the frost that settles in just after the honeymoon. I started checking little things, harmless things, her calendar, shared cloud notes, even the synced grocery list we used to add dumb things like fancy pickles, or emergency chocolate. But nothing odd stood out, nothing obvious. That made it worse. Because I could feel it, the absence of warmth, of interest, of whatever held two people together before the cracks showed. It was like living with someone pretending to be the version of themselves you remember, just long enough to get through the day. I thought about the message again. Wish I could have seen you again before you left. Not a mistake, not innocent, and not gone. I started noticing patterns. When she left the room to take certain calls, how she always took her phone into the bathroom, how she turned it face down, even during dinner. And one night, as we sat on the couch, something funny playing in the background, she laughed and reached for my hand. It almost fooled me, because in that moment, everything looked right. But I knew the truth. She was already somewhere else. And I was sitting next to someone rehearsing affection, while holding a secret just out of reach. That was the night I stopped pretending this was just new marriage jitters. Something had happened, and if I wanted answers, I would have to find them without asking. It was a Tuesday night. Rain tapping the windows, a breeze slipping through the cracked kitchen window. She'd gone to bed early, claiming a headache. I stayed downstairs, nursing a drink I didn't want, staring at the muted television screen like it might give me direction. The laptop was on the counter. Her laptop. Open but dimmed, the glow barely illuminating the keys. She'd been checking travel confirmations earlier, or so she said. I wasn't looking to break trust, but trust had already broken itself. When I tapped the space bar, the screen flickered awake. Chrome was still open. Gmail tab logged in. She hadn't signed out. I stared at the inbox for a long second. My name wasn't on it. She had a personal account separate from the one we shared for utilities and planning. I knew about it, but I'd never read anything in it. Until then. I didn't search right away. I just scrolled. At first, nothing unusual. Promotions, bridal list notifications, a note from her mother. Then I saw a name. No subject line. Just a thread, 4 emails. The sender: James. The same name from the notification in Santorini. I clicked it open. The top message was a thank you, vague enough to seem harmless, but written with familiarity. Then I scrolled down. Timestamps mattered. That's what stopped my breathing. One email, sent 12:49 a.m., the night of our wedding. Not the honeymoon. The night. Hours after we'd left the reception, still in formal wear, with her dress hung carefully on a padded hanger by the hotel closet. I read it 3 times. I can't believe I saw you again. Even if it was for a minute. You looked beautiful. I wish you hadn't left so fast. Attached was a photo. Grainy, taken in a car. Her, leaning in close to the passenger seat, lipstick still perfect, dress clearly visible in the blur. Same hair, same necklace I had unclasped less than an hour before we left the venue. Her smile was different. Not posed. Not for me. Beneath that was her reply. No denial. No protest. Just, I wasn't sure I could handle seeing you. But I needed to. She ended it with, I'll never forget tonight. The air in the kitchen thinned. I couldn't feel the floor under me. I didn't even hear the rain anymore. I closed the tab. Opened the downloads folder. More photos, some taken before the wedding, but the timestamps told the story. One from inside a hallway I recognized, the hotel lobby. Her dress barely visible in the reflection of the glass behind her. Smiling, laughing. With him. She'd met him that night. After the first dance. After the toasts. After the speeches about forever. While I was fielding a call from the valet for a missing gift box, she had slipped away, just long enough to destroy the beginning of everything we'd just promised. And it wasn't impulsive. The emails confirmed it. This wasn't a mistake. It was an appointment. I didn't wake her. I didn't scream or throw anything or tear the laptop apart. I closed the lid gently, stood in the dark kitchen, and let the pain pass through me like smoke. I had married someone who made a different choice the moment she became my wife. The night had been ours. She'd given part of it away. Strategically. Willingly. And from that moment forward, I wasn't the man she married. I was the man she had steered me wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of our bed, watching her breathe in the dim light spilling through the cracked doorway. Her face was peaceful. Undisturbed. Like she hadn't cracked the foundation we were supposed to be building. But I didn't wake her. I didn't speak. I watched. By sunrise I had a plan. First, I pulled her wedding itinerary from our shared files, hotel, ceremony timing, even the valet ticket logs. I cross-referenced timestamps with what I'd seen in the emails. It lined up too perfectly. He hadn't just happened to be nearby. She met him between 11 p.m. and 1:30 a.m., precisely the window when she'd said she was fixing her makeup, and then helping her cousin find her clutch. I remembered those details now because I'd waited by the elevator, holding her bouquet for nearly half an hour, wondering if the bridal train had gotten tangled or if she was just overwhelmed. No, she had planned it. Disappeared into a car with an ex who was supposed to be ancient history. I started looking into him the next day. James. I found his social profiles easily. Sparse but active. Pictures from 2 weeks before the wedding. A familiar car, parked near a venue that looked eerily like our rehearsal dinner location. That wasn't a coincidence. He'd stayed close. Just far enough to be unseen, but never really gone. I checked her phone when she left it on the bathroom counter. Installed a silent log sync tool. Something subtle, nothing illegal, just enough to mirror what came through. Within 48 hours, I had everything. They hadn't stopped. The tone shifted after the wedding, no longer flirtation. Now it was longing. She turned nostalgia into a tool. He talked about missing her eyes, and the moment that changed everything. She talked about needing space, and being confused, but never once mentioned me by name. I wasn't her husband. I was just the background to her crisis. She said, I don't know what this means yet. I'm trying to be good. Trying to be good. That told me everything. She wasn't guilty. She was weighing options. I followed his profile further. Found a link to a private blog, short entries, poetic ramblings, but one line burned itself into my brain. I saw her in white, and it didn't hurt like I thought it would. It felt like reclaiming something that should have been mine. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was calculated. Echoed. I didn't confront her. Not yet. She started noticing my distance. Began asking soft questions. Are you okay? Work stressful? You've been quiet. I told her I was tired, adjusting. The same script she had used on me. And then one morning she said it. At breakfast, over cold coffee and untouched toast, she reached across the table and said, I feel like I've been off since the wedding. I think we need a reset. A real one. I nodded slowly. What kind of reset? Therapy, maybe, she said, eyes searching mine. Or just space to figure out how to start over right. She called it growth. She called it honesty. But all I heard was a woman laying the groundwork for reinvention, without accountability. She didn't know I already had the receipts. She was staging a redemption arc, and I was already preparing the finale. The morning she brought it up again, she wore my old college sweatshirt, something she hadn't touched in months. Her hair was tied back the way I liked it, and she carried 2 mugs of coffee into the room like we were in some early chapter of marriage, not halfway through a silent war. She set the mug down beside me and said, We should talk. Really talk. I closed my laptop and looked up. About? She hesitated. A flicker in her eyes. Not fear, calculation. She was staging the scene. I know I've been distant, she began, curling her legs under herself on the couch. I haven't been myself. I think everything hit me harder than I expected. I didn't interrupt. I watched. Every word she said was placed carefully, like she was stacking blocks on a table full of cracks. I want us to work, she continued, eyes moist now. I think I've been holding on to things from before. From long before you. And I shouldn't have let that come into this. She never said his name. She never said what she had done. But the language was familiar, vague enough to seem honest, scripted enough to conceal. Then she said the thing that gave her away completely. I believe we can still build something strong. From scratch even. From scratch. As if everything before this moment was a prelude. A failed draft. I leaned back, watching her face, the twitch of her jaw when silence followed her plea. You think therapy would help? I asked, calm. She nodded too quickly. I do. I think it would give us tools. Tools. As if we had a leaky roof, not a collapsed foundation. I told her I'd think about it, and I did. For 2 days I let her believe I was considering her proposal. She became more affectionate, texting little heart emojis again, touching my shoulder as she passed, humming while she cooked. The kind of behaviors that had vanished after the wedding and now returned like borrowed costumes. But I watched how she reacted when I asked questions about the past. When I mentioned James's name in passing, a test, her eyes flashed too wide before she controlled it. She was worried, not repentant. She didn't want to fix the marriage. She wanted to erase the parts she'd ruined and rewrite the story with a different starting point. I let her believe it was working. I agreed to meet. Not therapy yet, I said. Just a talk. Somewhere neutral. She suggested the park. I countered with a coffee shop we used to visit, one where the tables were close, the acoustics sharp, and every conversation just loud enough to carry. She smiled like I'd offered an olive branch. She didn't know I was building a stage. I already had the guest list forming in my mind. People who mattered to her. People who once believed in us. People whose silence, once broken, would be impossible to ignore. She wanted a reset. I was going to give her one, just not the kind she expected. I spent the next 48 hours putting the pieces together, not just emotionally, logistically. There's a difference between reacting and dismantling. She had offered me an emotional reboot, a soft reboot of a story that had already been corrupted. But I knew that if I confronted her alone, it would become a story only she could revise, one she could retell in fragments, minimize, reframe. I'd heard her do it before, about smaller things, a disagreement with a friend, a cancelled plan she blamed on a miscommunication, when I knew it wasn't. No, this needed to be documented, witnessed, not just for vindication, for finality. I messaged her the next morning. Let's meet Saturday. Coffee at 11. Just us. Clean start. She responded in under 30 seconds. A single heart emoji followed by, yes. I want that. While she rehearsed redemption, I began making calls. Not many. Just the right ones. Her parents first. A short, polite message asking if they could join me for a quiet conversation. About something important. I think it would mean a lot if you heard it in person. I was careful. No hints of anger. Just enough sincerity to pique concern without revealing motive. Then my brother, someone who knew how to sit still and listen. Someone who had pulled me aside after the wedding and said, "You sure she's all in?" Not an accusation, just a question I had ignored. Finally, one mutual friend, Claire. She was sharp, thoughtful, and more observant than most. If anyone had suspected something was off, it would be her. None of them knew exactly what the meeting was about. That was intentional. Curiosity would ensure their presence. Silence would ensure their neutrality. I reserved the corner table at the café, the one near the window, where we'd once sat laughing over holiday plans. Now it would serve a different purpose: visibility, proximity. I wanted every face to be clear, every reaction undeniable. I didn't bring a folder or a dramatic envelope. That would come later. For now, I collected everything in a slim document sleeve, printed email threads, screenshots, timestamped photos, each page curated, ordered, unarguable. I didn't practice what I would say. I didn't need to. When the truth is heavy enough, it carries itself. Saturday morning, I dressed with quiet deliberation. Not for her, for me. Shirt pressed, shoes clean, expression calm. At 10:45, I left the house. She texted me just before I arrived. "Here early. Got us a corner table. Feels like a good day." I read it once, then slid the phone into my pocket. I already knew what kind of day it would be. And she, for all her practiced lines and hopeful tones, had no idea she'd already walked into the closing scene. She was smiling when I walked in. That kind of soft, effortful smile people wear when they want you to believe things are better before you even sit down. She had ordered a pastry, split it on a small plate between us like that was still who we were, a couple that shared things. I nodded, slid into the seat opposite her, and set the document sleeve gently on the table. She glanced at it but said nothing. "You look rested," she offered. "Been sleeping better?" I said. "Clarity helps." She tilted her head slightly, uncertain whether I meant peace or distance. Her instincts must have twitched, because she reached for the pastry and changed the subject. "I was thinking we could take a trip, reset somewhere quiet, no distractions. Just you and me." I nodded. "Sounds like you've been planning this for a while." "Not planning," she said, smiling again. "Hoping." At exactly 11:07, I glanced toward the door. Claire entered first. I texted her separately that morning, told her to walk in at a specific time, sit at the table nearby, and stay quiet. She spotted me, gave the faintest nod, and found her seat. My brother arrived next. He paused just inside the door, taking in the layout. He knew not to speak. He sat at a different table, close enough to see her face. Her parents were last. They looked confused, unsure whether this was a surprise brunch or something more serious. I waved them over to the spare chairs I'd pulled up. She followed my gaze and froze. Her mother smiled politely. "What's all this?" Her father glanced between us. "Everything okay?" She turned to me, confusion turning sharper. "Why did you invite them?" "For the fresh start," I said quietly. "You wanted one, remember?" Her lips parted like she was about to object, but she caught the shift in my expression. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was composed, and she knew that was worse. She looked at the document sleeve again. "What is this?" she asked, voice thinner now. "Just something I thought we should all see together." Claire sat forward but didn't speak. My brother's eyes didn't leave the table. Her mother reached for her coffee, slower now. The tension in the air had changed. No longer brunch, not yet confrontation. Suspense held everyone still. "I told you I wanted to heal," she said softly. "Whatever you think you're doing." "You did," I interrupted. "And I listened." I placed the sleeve on the table, fingers resting lightly on it. "I'm not here to destroy you," I said. "I'm here to stop lying for you." Her mouth opened again, a protest half formed, but her father raised a hand, not to silence her, but to signal he wanted to hear. She didn't know where to look. I didn't rush the moment. Because sometimes the silence before truth lands is louder than the reveal itself. And she, for the first time since our wedding, didn't control the room. She reached for the document sleeve before I could, fingers brushing over the top like it might burn her. I didn't stop her. I just leaned back, folded my hands in my lap, and let the weight of the room settle into her skin. She opened it slowly. The first page was a printout of the email thread, time-stamped, dated. Her reply to him, still visible beneath the wedding date header. Her eyes flicked across the lines, her face tightening with each sentence she had written, now rendered in ink. Real. Permanent. She swallowed hard. Her mother leaned forward, brow furrowed. "What is this?" No one else spoke. She moved to the second page. The photo. Grainy, yes, but undeniably her. still in her dress. In a car that wasn't mine. She set it down like it burned. I can explain, she whispered. I'm sure you can, I said calmly. But I thought it was time the explanations didn't happen in private. Her father's jaw clenched. Her mother's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water. My brother never took his eyes off her. She looked back at me, panic rising behind her eyes. You went through your laptop. You left it open. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She had no script for this. Not with witnesses. Claire hadn't said a word, but I could see it in her posture, the shift from confusion to recognition. She'd suspected something. This just confirmed it. I laid the next item on the table myself, the call log printout. A dozen late-night calls, all routed through an unlisted contact. Number matched to his profile. The same nights she had gone to. Clear her head. You planned it, I said, still quiet. The night of our wedding, while I was fielding valet issues and thanking relatives, you were with him. Her voice came back small, fragile. It wasn't like that. No? I asked. He said it changed everything. You said you wouldn't forget it. You weren't even wearing your ring yet, and you gave him your first night. The table was dead silent. I was confused, she said, shaking now. You don't understand how complicated it was for me. I understand enough. I cut in steady. You weren't undecided. You were deliberate. Her mother blinked, then whispered. You left the reception? She didn't answer. Her father stood abruptly. Not in anger, but in disbelief. He looked down at her like he didn't recognize what he was seeing. Then he stepped back from the table and said nothing. Claire closed her eyes briefly, like watching a thread finally snap. You brought them here to humiliate me? She said to me, barely keeping her voice from breaking. No, I said. I brought them so the truth couldn't be rewritten later. You wanted a fresh start. This is where it starts, with the truth. Her hands trembled now as she gathered the papers back into the sleeve, as if closing it might close the damage. But it was already open, laid bare, undeniable. She looked around the table, eyes darting from one face to the next, and saw what I already knew. There would be no salvaging this. And I hadn't even said the final words yet. She didn't speak, not for a full minute. She just sat there, the document sleeve now pressed against her chest like it could guard her from what was already unfolding. Her lips parted once or twice, but no sound came out. Her eyes moved from her mother, now staring at her lap, to her father, still standing with arms crossed, jaw locked in something that looked closer to grief than anger. Then finally, she looked at me. What do you want from me? She asked, voice low, afraid. I didn't answer right away. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the last item, a simple white envelope. No label. Just wait. I placed it on the table between us. She stared at it, like it might explode. Inside was the only thing I hadn't shown yet, a photo of the two of them, not grainy this time, clear. Taken by a street camera I had pulled through legal access channels, outside the wedding venue, 12:27 a.m. Her dress unmistakable. Him leaning into her passenger window, smiling. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. You chose this, I said, my voice steady. The night you became my wife. There was no rage in me anymore. No pleading. Just truth, cold, heavy, final. She leaned forward, voice shaking now. Please don't do this. Not like this. I met her eyes. Like what? Publicly? With witnesses? With evidence you can't edit later? She blinked, eyes glistening. You don't understand what I was going through. I understand exactly what you did, I said. I don't need a therapist to translate it for me. Her hands gripped the table's edge, knuckles white. I thought it didn't matter. I thought I could come back from it. That's not how vows work, I said. Silence again. Claire finally shifted in her seat, letting out a slow breath. Her face wasn't cruel. It was just resigned. She'd seen what she needed to. Her parents didn't say a word. I stood slowly, keeping my movements calm, deliberate. I reached into my pocket and removed my ring, simple, silver, unscathed. I placed it gently on the table beside the envelope. Then I looked at her one last time. I won't answer your messages, I said. I won't meet again. This was the conversation. I looked around the table, locking eyes with each person who had shown up. Thank you all for coming. Then I turned and walked out. No raised voice. No spectacle. Just a closing door and the truth, left on the table with all its quiet, irreversible weight. The sun hit me hard as I stepped outside, sharper than it should have been, like the air itself had been holding its breath and now exhaled through my skin. I didn't look back. Inside, I knew the table remained frozen in time, the ring sitting cold on the wood, the envelope unopened or maybe trembling in her hand. Her parents too stunned to argue, Claire taking mental notes. My brother likely rising from his chair, ready to follow me out if I gave the smallest signal. But I didn't need backup. I wasn't wounded. Not in the way she hoped. The pain was there. Of course it was, but it had passed through the part of me still tied to her. What remained was clarity, a clean break. I walked to the corner, turned left, and kept walking until the café was just another address. She texted later that day. It started with silence, then came the flood. A paragraph at first, then another, then 10 more. Apologies stacked like defenses. She used words like mistake, fear, pressure, grief. Nothing new. Nothing unpredicted. I didn't reply. The next day, she called. I let it ring. No voicemail. By the end of the week, I received an email. The subject line read, "Please let me explain. Not defend, just explain." I archived it without reading. She wasn't asking to fix the marriage anymore. She was asking for forgiveness she hadn't earned. She wanted control of the narrative back. And I had taken it from her, not through payback, but by removing the audience she counted on. The silent ones, the sympathetic ones, the ones who believed in her version of events. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't retaliated. But I had ended the performance, and left the stage empty behind me. Her world began to recede after that. Friends stopped reaching out. Mutual connections faded. My brother told me her parents weren't speaking to her. Claire didn't offer details, but the look she gave me weeks later, when we passed each other downtown, said enough. Whatever sympathy existed had fractured in that café. I filed for divorce 2 days after the confrontation. No fanfare. Just paperwork. My attorney said she seemed surprised by the speed. She didn't contest the filing. Maybe because she knew there was nothing left to salvage. Maybe because she was hoping silence would soften the public blow. But silence, this time, only confirmed what I'd made clear. There would be no next conversation. No carefully framed closure scene. No rewritten ending. She chose her moment. I chose mine. And I walked away, not victorious, but unburdened. She wanted to rewrite our story. I gave her the final page, and left her to read it alone. I moved out within a week of filing, not in a dramatic sweep of belongings or some cinematic moment of slamming doors, just quiet boxes, early mornings, and scheduled pickups when I knew she wouldn't be there. I left her the house. Not as a gift, as a reminder. Let her walk those empty rooms with echoes of what she dismantled. She texted again the day I returned my keys. "It's really over, then?" No question mark. Just a soft, defeated line. I didn't answer. The silence between us became the most honest conversation we'd ever had. People began pulling away from her, slowly, like shadows receding at dusk. Her curated social life, built on charm and half-truths, didn't survive scrutiny. I didn't share the details. I didn't need to. The people who mattered were at that café. They saw. That was enough. Her parents never contacted me again. I didn't expect them to. I heard through Claire that they were working through disappointment privately, which I took to mean they didn't want to admit what kind of person their daughter had been, especially not to the man she had deceived. James, the man she gave herself to after our vows, vanished from the picture. No more messages. No public photos. Not even a ghost account surfacing to defend her. I suspected she reached out to him again after the fallout, maybe hoping for rescue. But he was never going to be her second choice. And now, he wasn't a choice at all. She was left with what she'd created, a shell of beginnings, a reputation cracked at the core, and silence from the one person who had once held out his hand and asked her to build a life. I kept going.